Hi everyone. So I'm just going to go through the last meditation that I posted with you today because it was really heavily laid in symbolism for me, and it would be interesting to hear any feedback from anyone that's also done the meditation and see what they experienced. Also, I wanted to go through it with you so that you could understand a little bit about my process and how images are and messages are conveyed to me, and how I learn to interpret those as well. It's taken some practice. I've been doing this for a long time, but the more that we tune into our higher consciousness and our soul team, the better we get at understanding what they're conveying to us, and the better they can then kind of show us the information too, because they know how we can understand things. So once you start to learn to interpret your own symbolism, you will find that the guidance is clearer. So don't watch this if you are still intending to do the meditation, because it will give some of it away. So I would wait until you've done it if that's what you're planning. But otherwise, this is what I saw. I'd actually set the intention for this meditation to connect with the energy of goddesses and priestesshoods. I often do set intentions for meditations, and most of the time that's kind of where I'm guided, but sometimes they choose to go in a slightly different direction. And that definitely came through with this one. So the guide that I saw at the beginning was a lioness, but she kept crossing over with a cheetah. I'm going to come back to why this is significant after I've kind of gone through some of the other aspects of the meditation. Usually if I see a guide or an animal, it's one definite thing, especially if it's an animal actually. So this was really unusual to see it moving between the two different animals, and what they represent is significant. As we walked through the first space, to me it was a temple, and I saw a statue of the goddess Hathor. And as I walked through the temple, there were several baths on either side of me, and there were women wearing red silk in these baths. I think that might be connected to the oracles at Delphi, and I know that red was a colour that was often worn by women that used to channel back in those kind of ancient times. And then we got to the staircase, which for me was white marble, and it went up. It was very opulent, very wide staircase, and I could feel the coldness of the stone with each step as I followed behind this lioness cheetah. As I got to the top, the doors that I saw were very ornate. They were white with lots of gold detailing, and they were double doors as well, which is unusual. I usually just see one door. So it had a real kind of feeling of grandiosity to this space that I was about to enter. As I went in, it was a place that I've been to many times, and is to do with a past life in Lemuria, but it was just slightly different to usual. So the room, as I often see it, the key feature of it is that on the furthest wall there are huge glass windows, and beyond the windows is the ocean, and there's almost always whales and dolphins in the ocean beyond. And sometimes the inside of the room just changes a little in how it looks, but this time it was really a lot more different than I've experienced it before. And there were statues and artifacts of big cats throughout the whole room, and I started to feel the Lyran energy coming through. And I know that this room was connected to Lemuria, and I was getting from my guides that a lot of the beings that inhabited Lemuria had previous connections to Lyra. That's where a lot of them came from, and that's why that really feline energy was coming through. Also, that brought with it quite a matriarchal feeling to the energy of Lemurian society. Now, as I was in the room, the glass of the large windows smashed, and all of the ocean started pouring in, and then it was like just this kind of barrage of all these animals and water just coming at me. And then a being came through who I've experienced before. She's from Lyra, and she has channeled light codes through me a few times as well. She's got the most beautiful energy. I say she, but I actually learnt from one of my other guides that looks female, but energetically is genderless. She is in a much higher vibrational frequency, so there isn't that sort of physical aspect of the self, because most of the time she's in light body. And she came through and sort of started to spin around and became like a sponge and absorbed the water and all the animals and all the energies that was there. And I was told that she is like a container for the memory of that time of the Lemurian cataclysms and the floods that occurred. So she's almost like a kind of code. So when we can tune into her and when she channels light codes through us, it's sending out a frequency to recall the kind of the higher frequencies of that time before that happened. So it's like she was saving the beneficial and beautiful elements of Lemuria before it fell and disappeared. So she was kind of there, and just everything moved into her, and then she turned into water or like a body of light herself and just sort of disappeared. So then I came and shut the doors on that room and was able to stop any, like, no water came out once the doors were shut. It was sort of closing that memory off for the moment. But before we went anywhere else, the guide that I was with, the being that was a cat, that was a lioness and a cheetah, just for a few moments became the faces of 3 different cats. It was a tiger, and I think a jaguar and something else, I can't remember. I think that a lion actually, but they were all very, very male and had like a fierceness to them. Not aggressive, just a kind of fierceness. And in that moment, my guides conveyed to me that there is an element of a lack of balance that occurred due to the matriarchal nature of society in Lemuria, where that kind of became it brought the energy out of balance. And so because there was no nurturing of masculine energy, it started to actually throw the energetics of the place and the planet out as well, and then caused aggression within the males of that society, because they didn't have a place or a purpose. And it's interesting that that's come through, because I've been thinking a lot recently, and I'm actually planning to do some work with a couple of men that I know who are quite spiritually connected to try and work out a way to better help male consciousness to be able to rise at this time, because there is a lot of women that get into spirituality, and I think it does become overlooked with men sometimes. And if we're going to raise as a society, as a species, humans, we all need to lift frequency, we all need to connect, it needs to come into balance. And if we're tipped one way or another, so if we're tipped with men having the power and the kind of, like, the political structure, and women just doing the spiritual side, they don't actually integrate very well, those two things, those two energies. So it's not about doing it that way. It's about learning to all spiritually connect and rise together. But men access spirituality quite often differently to how women do. So we're looking to kind of go forward with some work to explore that more. So if there's any men out there who have any thoughts on that or anything they want to contribute, then I'd be very glad to hear it. So it's just interesting that this has come through with this memory from Lemuria at a time when I'm focusing a little bit on that anyway. And quite often we find that the more that we become connected, we'll start thinking of a concept, and then it will be brought to us from all different people and places and ideas, and start coming through quite strongly if it's something that we're in resonance with, which is what's happening here at the moment. So anyway, moving on, we went up another staircase, and for me that was a spiral staircase, and as we ascended it continued to spiral around, so the actual staircase was moving itself as we went up, and this was symbolic of the rising of Kundalini energy and also of the upgrading of DNA, which is going on a lot at the moment, especially with the solar flares. There's a lot of people experiencing that from what I've heard. And I've certainly had that come through a lot in meditation sessions with groups and singularly. So we get to the top of the staircase and to this room where the door for it was a very plain wooden door like you'd see in an old castle. And I had a kind of feeling of foreboding, like it was maybe not going to be a pleasant space on the other side of it, but actually it was like the door was just showing how we can see something and perceive it completely differently to what it actually is, what the truth is behind it. So we opened the door and the room was white with a golden ceiling, and the gold seemed to almost be dripping or kind of moving about as I looked up at it. So the ceiling looked very opulent, but the walls were very, very plain white. And again, this room was about balance. So first, the spiral staircase is showing that ascension process and integration of different energies. And the room at the top is almost like the representation of what is achieved when we can move upwards like that and come into a higher state. And the room in this room, there appeared firstly a set of lungs, and I could see like the top half of a person, but just the lungs and the heart. It wasn't gory, it was just showing breath and heart center. So they just completely filled the room, and I was told by my guides that the heart portal is just so essential for ascension, and this is a message they've conveyed to me many times before, so I often try and connect heart energy into meditations too, but they were really kind of hammering that one in as an important message. And then as I'd seen that, then the room began to be filled completely with white light, which I sent out to anyone that did the meditation. So that white light filled the room and filled us and filled our energy. So it's just showing that by going through that ascension process and being able to bring things into balance, then that brings us into that much higher state of vibration and consciousness. So the last thing I want to say about this meditation is just going back to the fact that the animal I saw was a cross between a lioness and a cheetah. A lioness is a very feminine symbol to see, although represents power and grace as well. So it also represents overcoming obstacles, and lionesses represent matriarchal dominant societies. The cheetah also represents power and grace, but it represents bravery and control and confidence in abilities. It has a much more masculine aspect to it. So although it's a similar animal, but really representing masculine and feminine, so it was interesting that that is the animal, how I saw it kind of hybridizing like that, in a meditation that is about bringing the two energies into alignment. And that is talking just about the energetics, about being able to attune energetically to each other. It says nothing of the physical form. So yeah, I hope that's kind of given you an idea of interpretation, and if anyone has seen anything and they want some help with their own interpretations, then that's also part of my work as well. I go through that process with people in sessions. So yeah, let me know your thoughts, how you felt and how you got on. Okay, thanks.